everybody. It's Allie, and welcome to our Y&R Chat for Sunday, May 20th, 2020, and welcome to Winter's Family Week. We had lots of love and laughs and a lion. I think I should start a petition to just rename Winter's Family Week into being Lion Week. In my mind, it was Lion Week on the show. That lion was fabulous. He was the star of the week for me. I really think we need to contact his people and see if we can get him back on the show. He was great. Oh, who was the star of the week for you? I think we need to start out our Y&R Chat with a poll. I'd like to ask you guys, who was your favorite member of the Winters family this week? Like, who were you really getting into this week? Was it Neil? Of course, it's so good to see him again, all fresh-faced and strong-willed. Or was it Drusilla? Hyper emotional and hyper drama always. Or maybe you were really into Malcolm, being his Malcolm self, all suave yet sensitive. But then, of course, we had Lily, young and in love. And we had Devon, his hard luck story turned good. There were so many wonderful moments this week. Which member of the family were you really focused in on? That's our poll question at yrchat.com if you'd like to go and vote. There's only one person who I left out of the poll, who I really absolutely think qualifies as a Winters family member. I mean, she was married to Malcolm and in love with Neil, and that's Olivia. I would have loved to have included Olivia. I'm only leaving her out because she got no focus this week. I'm glad that I spent a little time talking about her last week because I wouldn't really have had any opportunities to do it this week. She was just completely left out of the Winters family moments. I don't know, I guess maybe Olivia will forever be stuck playing second fiddle to her far more exciting sister. How cute was young Drusilla opening up to John Abbott about her boy troubles. I loved that scene. I mean, John was just sitting there patiently listening to Drusilla go on and on about her man troubles. But John was also knowing, he was wise at this point, that Drusilla was a bona fide troublemaker. But yet he sat there and he listened to her explaining her troubles, trying to steal her sister's boyfriend away. Oh, John Abbott. John had raised 2 daughters, so I think he probably was, at least on some level, accustomed to this sort of talk coming from the girls. He practically raised his 2 girls by himself, so I bet he got a lot of earfuls about boys from Ashley and Tracy. So I just thought that was a really cute little scene. And oh boy, Drew was desperate. She was desperate for a date that night to cover up the fact that she was lying to Nathan about having a boyfriend just so that she could sneak away to dance with him. She just wanted to find a way to be able to dance with him and get closer with him. And so she made up this elaborate lie that she now needed to cover up. And then along comes Neil Winters. Patriarch of the soon-to-be Winters family. I mean, Drew literally bumps into him in the office one day in 1991. Couldn't have been more of a bump. I mean, they literally bumped into each other and dropped all of her mail everywhere. She was so indignant about it, too. How dare he bump into her and make her spill her mail everywhere? I suspect that Cupid must have been buzzing around the office that day because actually that episode aired the day before Valentine's Day, 1991, February 13th. I also think it's entirely possible that Drusilla would have grabbed Cupid by his wings and made sure that he shot an arrow. I mean, Drew was so bossy. She was so dominant, but I think bossy is a good word to describe Drusilla, not just in those scenes, but in general. I mean, she told Neil that he had to be her date that night in order to, cover up the situation she had going on. And she was very honest with him about it. She explained the situation to him. And for some strange reason, even he didn't seem to know why, he was compelled to go along with it. There was just something about this girl, just something about this situation that made him intrigued enough to go along with it, to agree to go on this double date with her. And even that wasn't good enough. I mean, Drusilla made Neil audition for the job. She made him stand right there in the middle of the hallway, like dancing with her, having to prove to her that he knew how to slow dance. I don't know why it would be so hard to slow dance. It's the easiest thing you can possibly do, but she wanted to make sure that he was going to make it authentic. So she auditioned him right there in the middle of the hallway while she sung her little hum, like pretending that it was the music they were dancing to. She was completely in her own world. And then when she had enough of him, she just pulled it all away and said, all right, you'll do. Oh, I thought that was so adorable. Young, fresh-faced Neil, right? I mean, just at the beginning of his career, at the beginning of his life, being led around by bossy Drusilla so that she could court another man, her sister's man. I'm surprised that Neil, knowing him now, decided to go along with it, but it must have just been some sort of magic, because in the end, even though it took these two another couple of years to get there, they finally did get married. They finally did have that famous beach honeymoon that we saw a couple of weeks ago. So I'm assuming that Cupid did shoot an arrow that day and that it did land right in both Neil and Drusilla's hearts. I don't feel that I know Gina as well as I could. I'd like to get to know Gina a little better, because by the time that I came along in 1993, she was mostly there just consoling Danny and his relationship woes, or seating people at her restaurant. I thought it was interesting, though, that we started out Monday's show seeing Gina in 93, and we also saw her seating people at her restaurant on Friday's show in, I think, 2005 or 6. So Gina's been there. Gina had a long relationship with the show, and yet I feel like I don't know her all that well. I did not remember that Rex was her father. Probably because Rex Sterling is not his real name. I guess since we were talking about soap opera names last week and the week before, Rex Sterling is a pretty soapy soap opera name, but somehow I kind of like it. It's better than Brian Romalotti, I guess. Because Rex Sterling was known off screen, like before he ever came onto the show, as part of his backstory, as Brian Romalotti. That was his birth name. And Brian Romalotti was a con man. Jill found him, I guess, on a park bench one day. She enlisted him, decided to give him some money to pay him to seduce Catherine Chancellor out of her money, and Jill gave him this fake name, Rex Sterling. Maybe Jill watched soap operas, and that's why she came up with the name Rex Sterling. She gave him that name. It sounded appropriately masculine enough, and she paid him to seduce Catherine. Well, Catherine and Rex ended up falling in love, but years later, I guess Clint Radisson had long ago been an old cellmate of Brian Romalotti / Rex Sterling's, and Clint Radisson showed up in town, realized that Gina was Catherine Chancellor's stepdaughter, and he decided to try and marry her for her connection to the Chancellor fortune, which was a really common theme at that time. I mean, here we are again, somebody trying to marry the girl for her money. I guess it happens with the guys too, but it was just a really common theme. Everybody was trying to get married for some money. But on the side, Clint Radisson was working his bigger plan, which was to kidnap Catherine and swap her out with her doppelganger Marge once again in an attempt to get Catherine Chancellor's money. Now that was in 1990. And we, of course, saw that classic episode, I think it was 3 weeks ago, when Catherine and Marge were coming face to face for the first time. Well, after that incident, Clint went to jail over the whole plot. But Clint had escaped not that long after he went to jail. It was 1991, Monday's episode. Clint had escaped prison, and he had just shown up on Catherine's doorstep. So in that opening scene on Monday, Catherine was looking so concerned because she had just had a confrontation with Clint. He was there. She was scared of him. She was ready to attack him, but Gina had shown up, declared her love for Clint, and was saying that, Clint was a changed man now. So Catherine told Brock, her son, about the whole thing, and that prompted Brock to go and talk to Gina about the fact that she was harboring a fugitive. But as we saw, Gina was not budging. Gina was in love with Clint, and she was clinging to him with every ounce of rainbow-colored hair bow that she had in her. Now, Brock, I believe, had been involved with Gina. And Brock was not just about to let Gina become involved with the man who kidnapped his mother and who was escaped from prison. Brock was not going to let this happen. Brock told Clint that he was a no-gooder. He did not trust him, and he was going to go to the police. So Brock put his fedora on his head and walked his brown leather jacket right out that door. And oh my gosh, I was just so enthralled with Brock in that moment. The moment he put on his old beat up fedora and his brown leather coat, I was into Brock. Like, Brock was kind of hot. I can't believe I'm hearing myself say this, but I really feel like Brock was a good-looking man. And if he was on the show today looking like that, I'd be so into him. I just don't think that I ever realized Brock was that good-looking because I never saw him as anything other than a father. By the time that I came along in 93, I mostly knew him as Mackenzie's father. But wow, I was just really digging Brock's aesthetic this week, and he had these very strong facial features in his jawline, and I love his sensibility. He has such a genuine, realistic, salt of the earth sensibility about him. I don't know. You know who he kind of reminds me of? Maybe it was the hat, but for some reason I was getting a strong Michael Landon resemblance out of Brock in that 91 episode. Like Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon. I don't know why. So Brock left Gina's, but he decided to take the back alley. You know, the one with all the mugging murderers in it. That back alley behind Gina's where, you're definitely going to run into a murdering mugger who will just shoot you over $30 in a watch. So he decides to take the mugger alley. And sure enough, guess what? He gets mugged and shot And when Clint saw what was happening from the window above, he ran down to try to save Brock's life and redeem himself, and he got shot too. But Clint did not have a fatal wound. He managed to limp off and call the police just in time to get some help for Brock and save Brock's life. But Clint was also realizing that there was not going to be any happily ever after for he and Gina while he's on the run from the law, so he also ended up turning himself into the police. I loved also that alleyway scene with the mugger and the police and that huge crowd of bystanders. There's something about that scene that really looked like it could have been straight out of a TV movie. That was definitely not filmed on a soundstage. That seemed like a legit alleyway. Hopefully the non-mugging kind of alleyway. No murderous muggers in that. And that was a forced stage alleyway. That was like an upscale alleyway, probably, if they were filming in there. But I mean, if you think about it, today that alleyway would have been filmed on a soundstage. It would have just been a tiny set with a couple of crates, maybe a chain link fence, a couple of drums of something, like those big old drums of nuclear waste or something. I'm thinking of the JT, the scene when Nick revealed that he was masquerading as JT and pulling off his mask. I'm thinking of something along that line. Maybe there's a garbage bin, a trash bin or something in the alleyway. But I mean, it would have been a tiny little sound stage, and we probably also would have only got some flashing red and blue lights to give the impression that there were a police presence there. But I mean, that scene in the alleyway was a production, totally different from what we would have seen today. But I guess on the flip side, if that scene would have been filmed today, wardrobe surely would have picked the gigantic black thread off of that female police officer's uniform. Did anybody else see that? Because I couldn't take my eyes off of it. The female officer was wearing this bright blue police officer's uniform, and there was this gigantic black string on the shoulder. Like, that costume had just come straight off of the sewing machine. When Neil's little brother showed up in the big Genoa City in 1994, Neil must not have seen Malcolm since Malcolm was in high school, because Neil had made a comment to Malcolm asking if he ever finished high school or if he ever went to college. And we found out that Malcolm went to a trade school to become a mechanic. Can you even imagine if Malcolm had become Genoa City's sexiest mechanic instead of a photographer? I mean, what if real-life superhero Blade Bladeson had not taken Malcolm under his wing and made him instead Genoa City's sexiest photographer? Malcolm could have been Genoa City's sexiest mechanic, but he became Genoa City's sexiest photographer instead. And I'm in awe of how different things could have been. Oh. So what bad deeds must young high schooler Malcolm have done to make Neil so stiff and so cold toward him in that first re-meeting scene in Neil's office? Y&R was most definitely laying the groundwork for Malcolm to stir up trouble in Neil's life, but I'm imagining that the character of Malcolm just eventually became so popular that they decided to turn him around, make him a series regular, and in fact, eventually Shemar Moore went on to become one of the network's biggest stars. And I could completely see why. I believed, even in Malcolm's first scenes, his sincerity. He came off as genuine to me immediately. I believed what Malcolm was saying to Neil about wanting to become a better man, that he wanted to prove himself to his big brother, that the kid that Neil used to know no longer existed, and that he admired Neil in a way and was looking up to him and was wanting to build a life of his own and to model what Neil had done. I mean, I don't think that Malcolm came to town that day with the intention of causing problems in any way for Neil, but sometimes problems do tend to follow certain people around. I mean, Malcolm was walking through Neil's office door in 1994 in his bad boy baggy jeans and his bad boy baggy sweater, making Neil real stiff under the collar, real hot around the collar. And then that was 94, and in 1995, Lily was born. So, as we all know, Malcolm and Drew had sex sometime in 94, 95 while she was hopped up on cold medicine. So it wasn't long after that Malcolm slept with Neil's wife. So in retrospect, Neil was right to be cautious of Malcolm. He just wouldn't know for another decade what the depths of that betrayal actually was. April Stevens, aka April Williams, aka April Lynch. In 1994, she was on trial for her husband's murder, and she ended up receiving a suspended sentence because she had killed him in self-defense. I remember this storyline. I remember this trial. I remember that April's husband was abusive repeatedly toward her. I mean, it was over the course of years. I think Y&R had established over the course of years that she was a battered woman. And her husband was threatening to take her daughter Heather away from her. When she finally had enough, she snapped and she stabbed him to death with a letter opener. Ooh. Ooh. Brutal. That trial moved very slowly, though. I mean, especially in comparison to the trials of today. Even murder trials of today are over in like 20 minutes. Back in the 90s, I think we somehow had become a little more accustomed to long, drawn-out trials. Wonder how. And that trial, it had to have gone on for a week or more. I remember it being long. I remember it being arduous. I specifically remember feeling exhausted by that trial. And maybe it was because April wasn't a real front burner character for me. I think even though obviously I could empathize with the fact that she was a battered woman and she had killed her husband in self-defense, she wasn't a character that resonated with me outside of that. So I don't know, I felt the same way watching those scenes this week as I did in the 90s, that it just seemed like it was exhausting. Y&R would never have aired a lot of those scenes today. They never would have aired multiple eyewitnesses who the viewers have never seen before. To me, that made it a little tedious. I mean, I think that the courtroom drama was good at times. I think that the DA was really quite good and quite vicious. She was compelling to me. It was also really nice to see John Silva getting a little bit of a chance to shine. We talked about him at the Masquerade Ball for just a minute, and now here he is in 94, at least getting a chance to do his job, getting some screen time with his perfect facial bone structure. I looked up the actor who played John Silva online this week, and oh my goodness, like John Silva was way sexier than I ever gave him credit for. The actor's really good looking, and there was even a photo of him at the Eric Braeden 40th anniversary party where they had the art installation and all of those photos of Victor. He must have been at that, and I saw a photo of him there, and he's good looking. He's really good looking. And I don't know why I never picked him out as a soap punk back in the day. He's way sexier than I ever would have thought. If Y&R would have just peeled off his suit every once in a while, maybe messed up his hair, gave him a beard. I'm sure you guys are sensing a theme here now this week. It's basically Allie goes back in time and finds all new soap opera hunks to get into from like vintage era. Allie's vintage era soap opera hunks. Welcome to Y&R Chat. Okay, it's not all hunks here. I have some things of substance to say, and here's one of them. I hope that some of you got to see this week a glimmer of hope. And what I found so appealing about her in that 1994 episode. I hope you guys got a little taste of hope this week, because that was very early hope. That's the hope that has made her legendary in my mind. Hope was innocent yet wise. She was tender yet tough. She was honest. She was self-sufficient. She was self-determined. I mean, she was blind since birth, for goodness sake. But against all odds, Hope learned how to navigate her world in Kansas. And what we saw in that 1994 episode was Hope doing her best to learn how to navigate her new world in Genoa City. And what I want most of all to say about those scenes is this. Hope loved Victor. By 1994, she had no idea what she was getting herself into by loving Victor, by becoming a part of his world. That look of embarrassed joy that Hope had on her face when Jack handed her that bottle of Jabot's newest perfume named after her. Her, a blind girl from Kansas. Her face said it all. Because I'm sure that although Jack was being sincere in his admiration for Hope, who wouldn't admire Hope, Jack was using her. Hope in that scene, with her embarrassed joy on her face, she was an unwitting tool right then and there. Jack was seeing an opportunity to befriend and to flatter Hope so that he could annoy and undermine Victor. The subtle way that Jack made Hope question her own confidence in her relationship, the fact that Jack found a way to make her feel self-conscious about the fact that she was living with Victor, living with this man who she loved, but that she had no ring on her finger. Did you see her when Jack steered the conversation to her relationship with Victor when he really had no business doing that? And did you see the way that she kind of sheepishly and almost ashamedly wrung her finger, like where no ring was on it? That conversation and that comment was designed by Jack with malice. Jack came there with a purpose. I don't think for one second that Jack was just stopping by to help Hope by reminding her that she was living with a man unmarried. I think that Jack was there trying to develop a relationship with Hope to cause problems for Victor. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Hope was subtly thrust into the middle of all of Victor's drama with Jack, with Nikki, with Victoria, and eventually even with her own child. Hope didn't ask for any of that. She only asked to love Victor, and his world corrupted her purity and her innocence. And when Victor realized that his way of life was capable of rotting someone as wholesome and wonderful as Hope, then surely it could do the same to their child, their innocent child. So Victor chose to let her go with Victor Jr. back to Kansas, back to her way of life. Was she more lonely? Yeah, probably. Now she was blind, and she had a child, and she was burned by everything that happened to her. That was her first marriage. Victor was her first marriage. But now she went back to Kansas, and her character had evolved. She learned something. Victor's way of life, I'm sure, was far more exciting, but it was more sinister too. Whereas Hope's way of life was more simple, but it was more fulfilling. I cannot wait until the next time that I see Devon so that I can razz him about that time in 2005 when he wandered into the lion's cage at the zoo. Hey, Devon, moseyed into any lion cages lately? Oops! I don't even know how he took a wrong turn and ended up there. I have no idea, but it was definitely a good idea for everyone to climb down into the lion cage there to save him. Oh my goodness. First Devon's in there alone, and then Malcolm climbs in, then Neil climbs in. Like, that lion could have had 3 meals out of those 3. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh, but who could possibly be afraid of that cuddly woodly face? That cuddly woodly lion face? That wasn't no killer lion. I'm sorry, that was more of a teddy bear than a lion. That lion had big teddy bear puppy dog eyes. I couldn't possibly be afraid of him. Maybe he just wanted to be friends. Did anybody consider that? Was it me though? Or did anybody else get a legitimate chill during the moment when that lion was hypnotized by the raw, animalistic sex appeal of Malcolm Winters? It was like Malcolm looked at that lion, gave him the Malcolm sexy eyes with a little bit of an eyebrow raise, and that lion bowed its head and said, "Okay, sir, you are too pretty to die today, my man. You may pass." Raw, animalistic sex appeal. That's what saved Devon's life. Oh, Malcolm was always pretty in all of the scenes. In the first scene, in the baggy clothes in Neil's office, he was pretty in the lion's den. He was pretty in the coffee house later in the week. Malcolm was pretty. But in that lion's den, that was the grittier Malcolm. That was the dreadlock Malcolm. That was after Malcolm had been presumed dead in Kenya for a couple of years. I'm thinking that maybe Malcolm must have encountered a couple of lions in Kenya, which gave him the skills to then turn around and tame that zoo lion that had probably been born in captivity and also probably had a completely full belly and probably also was just hoping that someone would toss it a ball of yarn to play with. Oh. But that episode was awesome. That was the highlight of the week for me, hands down. That episode had a whole lot of drama too, because get this, it was out of the lion's den and into the car. Can you even believe that? As if the lion's den wasn't enough drama. Lily and Devon go to get the car. to bring it around for the adults to hop in and, ride off to safety and happiness. And yet, for some inexplicable reason, that car decided to develop a mind of its own and just started swerving all around the road. Malcolm and Neil were standing there being all kinds of cute, like showing the bond that they had as brothers, showing that they had buried the hatchet, showing the bond that those two actors had together. And then along comes Lily and the out-of-control car. That part was ridiculous, but it was really well done the way that Y&R slowed down that scene to show the impact, because it really, really looked like Neil got hit by the car. It looked like he was being impacted by the car while he was swinging Malcolm out of the way. Oh, and then that dramatic moment when Drew and Malcolm were both throwing themselves over Neil's body as he's lying in the snow. Wow! That is a lot of drama for one episode. What is up with these kids? Devon gets them all into the lion's den jam, and then Lily runs Dad over with the car. Same day, same night, within an hour of each other. Oh, Lily strikes again. Why does Lily even have a driver's license? There was no reason for that car to be that out of control. Was Hillary in the back seat? Just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Nikki's death toll. And this week, we saw just a few snippets from the end of the Joshua storyline from 2005. Joshua was the child who, as a child, Nikki shot and killed, and her father buried the child's bones, and they were discovered at the rec center building site, and Bobby Marsino turned out to be Joshua's brother. Nikki was so plagued by guilt about having killed Bobby's brother that she secretly had given Brittany some money to pay for the memorial service and asked Brittany to keep that a secret from her husband. Oh, Bobby Marsino. I liked this actor a lot, although I didn't love the storyline. The whole storyline around Bobby was very mob heavy, which is just not my cup of tea. But I do appreciate that Bobby owned the local strip club, formerly known as the Bayou, the famous Bayou, where Nikki got her exotic dancing start. And Nikki actually went into business with Bobby briefly to try to give the place a boost, but it didn't work out, as Brittany was mentioning. They tried to turn it into a cabaret that didn't have the nudity, but that just didn't work out, and Brittany and Bobby's marriage wasn't going to work out either. She had a right to be worried when she was talking with JT there. There were mob threats against her baby, eventually anyway. I mean, the scar that was on Brittany's face, you might have noticed it, was from when she was electrocuted by the stripper pole, which the mob had rigged just to teach Bobby a lesson. I mean, dark, bad. Can you imagine? Do you remember the scene where Brittany got electrocuted by the stripper pole? Who came up with that idea? I don't know. I probably did not like it at the time, but I can appreciate it in retrospect. Bobby went into witness protection. Brittany went on to have her baby, who they named Joshua, after Bobby's brother. And after the baby was born, Brittany had gotten word that Bobby died in witness protection, and she ended up leaving town forever. Well, until she showed back up in Genoa City not that long ago as a badass lawyer. If there is a list of people that I would like to see return to Y&R more often, Brittany Hodges is on that list for me. She came a long way from being that insecure girl who Nikki just knew was intimidated her just by knowing, because women just know. I think Brittany has come such a long way. I think she would be a great get for the show today. And hello, she has a super sexy husband who has a significant history on the show as well. I say, bring back Wrung. If I get to pick another person who I'd like to see return to Y&R more often, I pick Mackenzie. Granddaughter of Catherine Chancellor, daughter of Brock Reynolds, Y-O-Y is Mackenzie not an absolute staple of our show? Bring back Ashley B. Bring back Clementine Ford. Bring back anybody but Kelly Kruger. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. The woman who plays Mac now and most recently, I'm sorry. She's not enough Mackenzie for me. She's fine on her own. She's fine on Bold and the Beautiful occasionally, but she's not Mackenzie enough for me. I'm okay, honestly, if Y&R just wanted to cast someone new as Mackenzie. Bring Mackenzie back. Give her the Chancellor Mansion. Let her help Billy get his life back on track. Give her a new love interest. Let her be, fought over by some of the guys in town. Let her work at Chancellor Industries, or let her carry out some of Brock's volunteer work. I mean, there's just so much that Y&R could do with Mackenzie, and seeing her there in 2005, comforting JT over his breakup with Colleen, it just made me miss the Glow by Chabot kids. I would love to see them now all glowed up. I think there's just so much that Y&R could do with that generation. And it's everybody but JT, of course. They really blew that. They really blew following up on JT. It is hard to watch any of JT's scenes anymore, now that Y&R decided to destroy his character forever. Yeah, that sweet guy who was there comforting Brittany actually ended up pretending to be the father of her baby to help protect the pregnancy from the mob threats against Bobby. Yeah, that guy turned out to be a brutal wife abuser and an attempted murderer. Ugh. Kevin Fischer was a real creepazoid in 2005. And as we'll see next week, he was an even bigger creepazoid way before that. But that creepy smile that Kevin was giving to Michael when he said to Michael, "Wow, to think at this time last year, Lauren and I were still together." I got news for you, Kevin. You and Lauren were never together. You were obsessed with Lauren. You had an imaginary relationship with her, and she tolerated you just simply because you're Michael's brother. Oh, I kind of miss creepy Kevin in a weird way. I think only because Greg Ricart just played it so well. Because when I looked into Kevin's eyes in 2005, I really believed that he was mentally ill. But I also at the same time really believed that he had a good heart, and it was a strangely compelling combination. I can see why they went on to make him a star of the show, but yeah, seeing him there in 2005 did also make me appreciate how far the character has come, and I'm going to be getting a whole lot more of that next week, I know. It makes me feel glad that he was finally able to find a lady who loved him back, because Michael was concerned about Kevin's obsessive tendencies. He was obsessed with Lauren at a point, and during that episode he was getting ready to become obsessed with Mackenzie. And that lottery ticket, by the way, became significant. That lottery ticket that Kevin gave to Michael as a thank you ended up being a winning lottery ticket. Imagine that. And Michael and Kevin ended up splitting the profits, and Kevin partnered up with Mackenzie to buy Crimson Lights. Our Wednesday episode was from February of 2005, and then the Thursday episode took us just a few months into the future, into June 2005. So we just skipped from February to June 2005, when Ashley, at that time, Ashley Abbott, a woman of great class and sophistication. We went back to that time when she was dating a completely obvious villain, Tom Fischer. Like, That man was so villainous, and there was so much villain stank coming off him in his leather jacket. He might as well have just had a pencil-thin mustache and a top hat and a cape to swirl around. Why would Ashley Abbott ever be interested in such an obvious sleazebag like Tom Fischer? That never made any sense to me, and honestly, I don't have a whole lot positive to say about Tom Fischer or the story. It's just one of those stories that I just would rather almost forget. Kevin's abusive father, it's just so awful, and he was just so manipulative, and to me, and that's just a matter of taste, to me that brand of villainy just wasn't fun to watch. Child abuse is just not fun to even think about anybody who would do that to a child. He was just a monster to me. Then and now, he extorted money out of Kevin. He turned around and extorted money out of Kevin after abusing him for years. He extorted money out of Gloria. He partnered up with Sheila Carter. He kidnapped Lauren. And he made John Abbott have to shoot him in order to save Ashley. I'm miffed also because John Abbott never recovered after that. I deep down blame Tom Fischer for John Abbott's death. I don't think I'm that far off to feel that way. John had to go to prison after he shot and killed Tom, and I think that it was the stress over all of this that caused John's stroke. I still to this day cannot believe that Y&R had the nerve to kill off John Abbott. Why did they do that? John's death just fueled the war that was going on between Gloria and the rest of the Abbott family, and meaning Ashley and Jack. I mean, Ashley and Jack stopping Gloria from using the Abbott name when she was invited to become a judge on Extreme Catwalk. I mean, that in comparison to everything else that went on with the war between Gloria, Jack, and Ashley, the Extreme Catwalk debacle was small potatoes. My favorite part of the Thursday Winters Family episode was simply Malcolm serving coffee at Crimson Lights and serving a shoulder for Sharon to lean on. Cassie had just died. It was almost exactly 1 month prior that Cassie had died when Sharon was sitting in the coffee house. And she was talking to Malcolm, and we were seeing that Sharon and Nick had two totally different approaches to their grief over losing their daughter. Sharon was sad and introspective, while Nick was obsessed with hunting Daniel down and bringing him to justice. I think Nick even said it best. Finding Daniel and making sure that Daniel was punished was Nick's only salvation. And there was also a point in that episode when Phyllis, long before she had any romantic relationship with Nick, long before she had any even friendship with Nick, Phyllis was reminding Nick that while he was off in LA hunting down Daniel, he had a wife and child still at home who needed him. But Nick and his blind rage just superseded all of that. It made Sharon feel abandoned. And it's just such an incredible betrayal that he would go on to have that affair with Phyllis. He isolated himself from Sharon, and then he went on and had an affair on her while she was grieving their child. Just making me mad at characters all over again. That's all this is doing. It's bringing up old stuff. I had long forgiven Nick for everything that happened with that. Now here it's coming up again. Get mad all over again. I mean, how could I help it seeing Sharon sitting there alone in that coffee house talking through her feelings with her husband? No, with Malcolm. But Malcolm was so comforting, and he was so sincere, and there was just something so calming and relaxing about the way that Malcolm was reassuring her. It just, I don't know. I watched that scene with Malcolm and Sharon. I watched that episode right before bed, and it just made me wish that I could bring Malcolm from 2005 home with me, And I wish I could set him right there by my bedside and just let him talk to me while I'm falling asleep. Because he was so relaxing and so reassuring with Sharon in that coffee house scene. I was just like, I just want him sitting right here next to me tonight. Just like talking me to sleep. You know, like, it's going to be okay, baby girl. You just relax. I got you. Malcolm got you. Gosh. That'd be a dream come true. I mean, what would be more relaxing, a more relaxing way to fall asleep than that? Well, Drew sure didn't feel that way about Malcolm. Definitely. Drew did not want his help in that episode. She didn't need him worrying about Lily. She didn't want his help finding Lily. And at that point in time, I think that Malcolm had been pressuring Drew to get a DNA test to find out once and for all if Lily was his daughter, which we all knew. Everybody kind of knew for a long time. That was a paternity reveal that took a long time to come out. But when Drew and Malcolm did get the DNA test, they kept it a secret from Neil, and Malcolm just left town. I think the fact that Drew didn't want Malcolm's help during Lily's runaway kind of played a part in driving Malcolm away. Drew just didn't want him there. And so he left. Oh, yeah, the chase in LA for Lily and Daniel. How about that musician guy? That musician guy that Daniel called to crash with him in LA. Like, could Y&R... Y&R went to the store. Y&R went to the extras store, the stock player store, and they said, can you just give us somebody who looks like a stereotypical Hollywood music guy? Yep, that's the one. Okay, we'll take him. He's got to look real hip, and he's got to talk real hip. No bacon. Yeah. Okay, man. Okay, man. If you say so. That episode honestly didn't have a whole heck of a lot of Lily in it. I'm not sure how representative of the Winters family that Thursday episode was. I mean, other than the fact that they were all in it at the same time. But it didn't seem very Winters, it didn't seem very Lily-centric. I mean, you could tell that Y&R had picked episodes to highlight certain members of the Winters family. And that didn't seem like a Lily highlight episode for me. Devon got a highlight episode. Drew and Malcolm and Neil got highlight episodes, but I don't know. I feel like that episode needed more Lily. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that they didn't pick a Lily marriage to Kane or something like that. So this was a little bit more of a unique pull rather than just doing something like one of Lily and Kane's weddings, which I'm sure is coming for like Romance and Weddings Week down the road. There'll be a theme where we'll see a Lily and Kane marriage episode. But, you know, I mean, I like that they were thinking out of the box, but this episode was more about Daniel, really. He was on the run after not being responsible for Cassie's death. I'm sorry. It was not Daniel's fault that Cassie had died. Nick was wrong. Wrong. And you'll just never be able to convince me otherwise. Cassie had a crush on Daniel. He was passed out drunk in his car. She chose to drive him home when she didn't even have a license. And she paid the ultimate price. It was awful. It was horrific. I cried my damn eyes out. But it was not Daniel's fault. I have spent weeks now fawning over Heather Tom's Victoria, and how sassy and how independent she was. But on Thursday's episode, we saw Amelia Heinley's Victoria fresh onto the show in 2005. She was having that dinner meeting with Jack, and she could not have been more than 1 month into that role. And look at her. She was fresh. She was sassy. She was playful. What happened to that Victoria? It's not Amelia's fault. I'm realizing now it's not even about portrayal. I'm realizing that Y&R has just really screwed up her character. All Victoria has done for years now is frown and cry and be angry, and I'm totally sick of it. The role of Victoria Newman is such a plum one. She's the damn princess of Genoa City. She should be powerful and confident, yet feminine and flirty. She should be witty and intelligent. She should be great with her kids. She should be a role model character. And I'm realizing this week that Amelia Heinle has it in her. I was reminded just looking at her face like, oh yeah, she used to do this. Y&R just needs to stop torturing the Victoria character and let Amelia shine again. It was wonderful to go back and see Devon officially becoming a member of the Winters family in 2006. That was an excellent note to end the week on, and specifically to end the Winters family week on. I just also thought it was very interesting to see Devon going through his journey of embracing his new family at the same time that Catherine was on the cusp of realizing that Jill was not her long-lost daughter, that she instead had a long-lost son who would turn out to be Tucker McCall, who would turn out to be Devon's biological father. So here we have in this 2006 episode, Catherine and Devon totally separate at this point and having no idea that their stories were about to intersect. And I don't even think it was planned at that point. We only know it in retrospect. Ugh. Good. That was good. I like seeing Devon. And sometimes I actually forget that Devon had lost his hearing. So he must have had that cochlear implant put in just right around the time that he was officially adopted. So that was a really good year for Devon, and he's someone who's in a lot of ways grown up on the show, so it was really wonderful to see him. I don't know who could ever look at that fresh-faced kid and think that he was responsible for murder. Yuck. Carmen Mesta. Blech, this is not a good period of Y&R for me in general. I don't like this era. Drew had been involved in a pretty basic, standard soap opera catfight with Carmen Mesta. It was over Neil, of course, and Carmen wound up dead one day behind Neil's nightclub, and it just never made sense to me that William Bardwell, now that's William Bardwell, mind you, not Jeffrey Bardwell, his twin brother. The district attorney of that time was William Bardwell, and he was convinced that he had a strong enough case against Devon to charge him with murder, and I just never liked the Carmen Mesta murder mystery. I'm sorry, it's probably one of your favorites or something, and I'm just like, but I can't, you can't expect me to connect with something now that I couldn't connect with then. And I just remember being so irritated with the way Y&R was dragging out the murder mystery. And then they all of a sudden, at the last minute, as they are sometimes prone to do, they just decided to do this never would have seen it coming reveal and told us that Jana Hawks, Kevin's wife, was the one who ended up killing Carmen Mesta. I mean, we spent months was it Devon? Was it Brad? Was it, it could have been any number of people. No, it was Kevin's wife. Not connected to the story at all. It was just her. She just did it. It was a botched storyline. I mean, I will grant you, Jana was always wacky and she was always edgy, but one day out of the blue, Y&R just decided to make Jana a murderer, and it was revealed that she killed Carmen for absolutely no good reason. And then shortly after, Jana just had a brain aneurysm and died. Now I understand perfectly why Y&R did not include Sheila versus Lauren in Rivals Week last week. It's because they were saving her for Villains Week next week. Yay! This is going to be good. This I am really, really looking forward to because I saw the preview for next week and it looks like we're going to be getting not only Sheila versus Lauren, but we're also going to be getting the Sarah versus Lauren episode that I was talking about last week, where Tracy Bergman was playing Lauren and Sheila's sister Sarah, who had plastic surgery to look like Lauren. So Tracy Bergman was playing both roles, and she's like coming face to face for the first time, or well, I don't know if it was for the first time, but she's coming face to face with Sheila's sister inside of an old abandoned carnival with all of the funhouse mirrors. That was awesome. I can't wait to see that. And the other one I'm really excited to see is the David Kimball episode. It looks like we're actually going to see him get crushed by the trash compactor after the masquerade ball. Wow. I mean, yes. Bring that one on. I think that's going to be tomorrow. Yee. And we're also going to see Isabella in action. Last week we saw Ricky, and next week we're going to see Isabella, the mother. She's trying to drown Christine in the bathtub. That ought to be good. I mean, Y&R hasn't even shown that scene in flashbacks in a long time. So that's going to be good. And then surprisingly, maybe you weren't surprised, but I'm a little surprised. There's going to be a Kevin Fischer episode. Now, I'm real happy to see Kevin Fischer being a bad boy, and 100% he was a villain. I'm just kind of surprised that they are including him in Villains Week, because a lot of these people didn't get reformed. Kevin actually is a villain who got reformed. But I'm also wondering, okay, well, why did they pick Kevin then if they didn't pick Michael? Like, I wonder why they didn't pick Michael Baldwin. I wonder if we're ever at any point of these classic episodes going to get to see Michael furiously digging a tunnel into Christine's apartment. This whole episode is just too bizarre. Last week, John Abbott was having a conversation with Jill about, the fact that Victor totally returned from the dead, and he made a comment about how this whole episode is just too bizarre. I knew that was going to be a hard quote, but a couple of you guessed it right. So congratulations, Anna, who I should have guessed, Anna, that you would have got the John Abbott quote, because I know you're a fan of his, but also Henry and Daisy and Victoria and Ambreen. You guys all guessed it right. John Abbott was the answer. Let's see if you can guess who said this week's quote. Here's a little bit of a nice little nugget of wisdom for you. Nothing worthwhile comes easy. I think that is very true. But do you know who said it? If you do, go to yrchat.com to leave your guess. And if you can tell me successfully who said nothing worthwhile comes easy, then I will give you your shout out on next week's Y&R Chat. Let's read some of your comments, starting with Diana, who says, I would love to see a Villains Week, but I want to see classic villains, not the ones we've seen in the more recent years. The villains I want to see are George Rollins, plotting to frame Paul for his murder. David Kimball, when he's married to Nina, and also the episode where he comes back again as Jim Adams and is married to Nina's mother. Oh, yeah. Sean Garrett, who was obsessed with Lauren and buries her alive. Lisa, who holds Brad hostage in a bird cage. Or Rose DeVille, who kidnaps Nina's baby and sells him on the black market. That baby turned out to be Ronan Malloy years later. Ooh, Diana, dang, those are some good ones. Wasn't Rose DeVille, wasn't she played by the woman who played Sally? No, on Bold and Beautiful. No, maybe not. Maybe not. Ooh, but yeah, see, I'm with you here. I gotta say, I am more interested in the older episodes. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe because I just want to see episodes that I haven't seen before. Maybe there's something about that that's appealing more so to me. And I like the villains that Y&R chose to highlight. But man, I gotta tell you, Brad being trapped in a birdcage sounds real good to me right about now. I mean, we are going to get some David Kimball, so that's a plus. I swear, I want to say Rose DeVille. Wasn't that one played by the woman who played Sally Spectre on Bold and the Beautiful? That'd be a good one, too. Yeah, I'm liking the deeper pulls of the classic episodes. It seems like a lot of the classics that we're getting right now pretty much fall between the early 90s and the mid 2000s. They really are not digging into the 80s stuff, which admittedly is the stuff I haven't seen. I just have so little reference for anything that happened on Y&R in the 80s, unless it's just by, reading about it. But I've never seen those 80s episodes. And I'm sure it's probably really hard to go back in and remaster all that stuff. I'm sure it is not an easy task. But yeah, if I have one little criticism about the classic weeks, I will say it's seeming like it's classics, but it's only 90s and 2000s. But another good idea that Diana has for theme weeks, Diana says, I'd like to give you another idea. I think it would be fun to have a vacations theme week or a honeymoon theme week where the characters are like on a tropical island. Yeah, location shoots, vacation week. Everybody's cooped up inside. Here's some tropical shoots that we've done, or just outdoor stuff. There's even been a couple of times when Y&R went to LA. Something like that would be kind of fun. I love that idea. That'd be really fresh. And here's another theme idea from Anna saying, I think they should have a theme week for galas. Imagine the fashion. Yes, galas week. Oh, we could have just like ball gowns, just all of the just going to the red carpet. They could call it red carpet week. Yeah, I love it. Oh boy, I do like the themes that they've picked so far. I asked you guys last week what you thought about Rivals week and which of the rivals that we saw last week was your favorite. And by a pretty wide margin, everybody was loving Catherine and Jill. Catherine and Jill got 49% of the vote for favorite rivalry, followed by Victor and Jack at 27%, and then 12% Nikki and Sharon, 12% Lily and Hillary. So Nikki and Sharon, Lily and Hillary were definitely low on the list. I mean, I don't know. I think they're all good rivalries for sure, but it's really hard to beat Catherine and Jill. Actually, Ambrini says, I like the cattiness of Catherine and Jill. They call each other names, but they don't use the B word or other swear words that we've been hearing on the show every week now. Witch, bat, nitwit. I love those. Nikki and Sharon come in at a close second, though. The barn scene was so comical. I've noticed that, too. I do like that there's a more creative use of insults when it comes to Jill and Catherine's rivalry, and Nikki and Sharon had a lot of that, too. It's very easy to just throw out, as you say, the B word. That's an easy one, but I like when there's a little bit of a creativity in the insult. Marianne V says, I still like the rivalry between Jack and Victor the best. But then it was more biting, more visceral. They're almost friends these days. Catherine and Jill ended up coming around to being friends. And now that I think about it, you know what? So did Nikki and Sharon, and so did Lily and Hillary right before Hillary died. Lily was like, oh boy, let's be friends now that you're dying and I killed you. That is the pattern, right? I mean, the rivals eventually bury the hatchet for a while and become friends, and then something will happen to, bring the hatchet up out of the dirt, and then someone will shove it into another's back. Oh, let's talk about the Winters family week here. Daisy says, I love the Winters family. There are so many twists and turns with them, and that's one reason that I'd love to see Drusilla back. The Winters family could have had many new stories, starting with where Drew was. And Drew's sister, Liv, could even return to help find out. Nate may or may not like that, but there could be a good story in there as well. Also, Lily and Devon having their mothers return and Lily's kids with the grandmother could bring many different storylines for them. It would be great to see more of the Winters family, though. Yeah, I'm picking Drew. I'm voting for give Drew in this week's poll question. She was kind of my favorite Winters of the week. I think that the reasons they didn't bring her back onto the show were very political. But it's interesting that they never really tried to recast the role of Drusilla, because, as you say, she's a really, really important piece of that family. And now with both Neil and Drew gone, it's a pretty substantial hole there. And we don't see Lily as much as we used to. Devon's really taken on more of that patriarchal role. And now that we have Nate on the show, absolutely. I wish that Y&R would do a little more to build out the Winters family and their legacy. Well, let's skip on over to talking about Gloria here. Superplex says, Gloria is constantly getting kicked in the teeth by the Abbotts. As far as they are concerned, she is the family pariah, a blot on the supposedly unblemished history of the Abbott clan that they desperately wish to remove as expeditiously as possible. She is treated little better by her kids, Kevin and Michael. I get that Kevin should be naturally resentful toward her because of his abusive childhood growing up with his father, but I do not understand why Michael dislikes her so much. He treats Gloria as if she is a millstone wrapped around his neck, a huge weight that he has to carry for the rest of his life. Poor Gloria is probably the most misunderstood character on the show. Boy, that's a really interesting point about the dynamic between Michael and Gloria. I think that Michael's attitude about Gloria it's been kind of similar about all of his family, because he's had that idea or that attitude toward Kevin too. Just like, these people just drag me down. All I ever do is bail him out of trouble. And I think that that happened a lot in the early days with Gloria. I think Michael resented feeling like he was always the one who had to bail the family out of trouble. I mean, Gloria had the whole face cream debacle. I think Gloria is a troublemaker, and Michael is more of the stiff suit, and I think he probably just resented having a mom that was so different from his own personality. But it's kind of a similar dynamic to like Neil and Malcolm. Neil was the stiff suit and Malcolm was a little more carefree, and that caused friction between them. So maybe it's just a personality clash. But boy, watching her this week was so good. How about that black suit she had on with the white tailoring around the collar, and she had the collar popped up? I mean, I did not appreciate Gloria at the time as much as I should have. I wish she was given all that drama on the show today. I mean, it was wonderful when they brought her back and gave her the receptionist job, but she was so much more fun when she was kind of glamorous. I really, really enjoyed watching Gloria this week, and I would love to see her back. There's so many people. There's a list of like, hey, why isn't that person on the show anymore? I would definitely trade a couple of our current cast to get some of these older people back on, or these previous cast members back on. Leslie makes a good point here, asking, is Fenmore's still in the lobby at Jabot? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what the status of Fenmore's department stores will be right now. Hopefully Fenmore's department stores are not going to have to close a bunch of stores. I don't know. Did that boutique get closed a long time ago, or did it just slowly fade away? I think it just slowly faded away, and Y&R just hasn't mentioned it. But that was a fun set. I liked seeing Amber working there and Lily working there, and it gave a place for the ladies to shop and chat. Bring back Fenmore's, the little boutique. Yeah, it also expanded our awareness of the Jabot building. I mean, that was a really nice piece, artistic idea there for the set, and I'd like to see it again. Oh, well, how about this coming from Joe? Joe says, Allie, this is a little off topic, but what a huge disappointment. Did you catch the story of Soaps this Tuesday night on ABC? It was a 2-hour love fest for all my children and General Hospital and very little else. It was like an infomercial for a DVD set of these two shows or something. They praised Arna Phillips and Agnes Nixon, but not a single mention of Bill Bell. Y&R, the #1 show since 1989, doesn't get a mention to that fact? I am horrified and I feel personally slighted. This is awful and I hope you saw it and hated it too. Oh my goodness, yes. I did not see it. I really should, but 2 hours if it turned up being just about all my children in General Hospital, I'm glad I didn't invest the time because I would have been mad. Several people did chime in and mention that they had watched the History of Soaps, or is that what it was called? The Story of Soaps. And a lot of people mentioned that there was a real lack of Y&R material on it. I mean, maybe they should have just called it The Story of ABC Soaps or The History of ABC Soaps instead. Because if it didn't embrace the CBS soaps, then I don't know why they would do that. Although, I mean, on the flip side, I'm sure that if CBS had produced the show, it probably would have been very Y&R and Bold and Beautiful, and I think Guiding Light also was a CBS soap. I'm sure there would have been a lot of that if CBS had produced it. Gary also watched the History of Soaps and had commented, is that what it's called? Story of Soaps or History of Soaps? Use them, just you tell me, imagine I'm saying it correct. Because I don't know what it was called. But Gary was watching that documentary and relating it to all of the nostalgia that we're getting now with Y&R and airing these classic episodes. And Gary was noting how much of the show, Y&R, is actually just emotional filler. Gary called it emotional filler, saying that there's just so much that's simply forgotten. It's like the stories and the characters that matter to us. You know, we can recall them with vivid detail, but there's just so much on a daily or a weekly or a yearly basis that leaves our brains because it is just filler. Yeah, it is really very, very true. And as I'm watching these classic episodes, there are so many characters and so many moments that I am connecting with, but then these other little subplots will come up, and it's characters that maybe I kind of sort of maybe remember, or maybe I look at their face, but I can't really recall their story. And it is true. It's just, there's the ones that you love, and then there's everything else, and it's not necessarily proportionate. A lot of times, maybe you're tuning in for one story, 2 stories, and guess what? You get the rest of it, whether you like it or not. It does kind of make you realize how much of Y&R is good and how much of it is maybe just there, and you're just sort of watching it. Maybe not super engaged with it. Maybe not even remembering it. It's not memorable. It's just kind of there. And you're just along for the ride. Henry last week had commented on really just not being into the classic episodes. And so Henry wanted to weigh in and give us more on the nostalgia viewing and why it's a struggle for him to watch. Henry says, I see characters that have moved on to other soaps, like specifically The Bold and the Beautiful, and just as I was getting used to them in their new roles, they're back on the reruns of Y&R. Heather Tom, formerly Victoria on Y&R, and now Katie on Bold and the Beautiful. Brad Carlton, his now Bill Spencer on Bold and the Beautiful. It took me some time to accept the characters in their new roles, and now they're back as if it's from the dead. This just really disappoints me. I wish that CBS would fill the time for both soaps with other programming until we've conquered COVID-19. For now, these reruns just ain't working for me. I don't think you're alone in that, Henry. I think there are a lot of people that are having a hard time connecting with the classic episodes. I really have been enjoying them. This week, I do think I hit a little bit of a lull, mostly because I liked the Winters family stuff, but as we were talking, it's just a lot of it I realized, like, that wasn't really a good story. And we seem almost to be stuck in that time frame from 1990 to 2006. And so you're kind of jumping back and forth, and you're, just within that chunk of time and realizing, like, that story wasn't even very good. And, I definitely hit a little bit of fatigue with the classic episodes this week, I have to admit. Like, once you get to the all of the bombshells, all of the big episodes, episodes and the things that we all know about that are legendary, there is just a lot of emotional filler. And I think that that probably makes it difficult for people to connect with. It's also to, aside from the big moments, connect with the other little things that are going on when you just may or may not remember them. Or maybe you weren't watching at that time at all. And it's like, well, I don't care about this story that was sort of minor at the time, or this person that, I don't care about this story that wasn't good then. Why is it good now? Why should I care about it now? Yeah, I don't think you're alone. I think next week's going to be good because it's going to be those are going to be sweeps episodes. Not every week is sweeps. That's just something that I think we're all kind of realizing through all of this. Filler. There's a lot of filler. But I think next week is going to have a lot of sweeps episodes because those are going to be high drama, villain, high impact episodes. Yeah. I mean, it's wonderful. It was wonderful to focus on the Winters family, but I actually wanted more Winters. I almost possibly would have preferred a type of clip show that, like, okay, today we're going to highlight Neil and Drew, and we're just going to do a compilation of scenes from them. I mean, no need to do an interview. Just, like, toss them in there from commercial to commercial and just do a compilation of scenes. Or, same thing with, Lily. We're just going to give you a Lily highlight reel, Devon highlight reel, Malcolm highlight reel. But watching them in their full episodes, it's like, okay, well, the Winters family was there, they're great, but all this other stuff, I mean, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but it is, again, not necessarily those big boom episodes. Like, some of it's filler, gotta admit. Yeah. Ellen weighing in here says, I wish they would air a whole week of continuous episodes as they originally ran. All of the skipping around, it's confusing and much less satisfying for me. Surely they can find runs of 5 episodes that tell a good story from different eras. Okay, I like this idea too, because it is hard to get into a story for one day and then you don't know the backstory. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But you also definitely aren't going to get to watch the follow-up episode. So it's hard to get too into it when you're not going to just jump right, not rolling right into the story. It's just little plucks. So I love this idea, Ellen, that maybe they should just pick a 5-day run and just do it. Let it be there. That would maybe be a little refreshing to mix things up. Because, I mean, what are we now? We're into over a month of these classic episodes. I think the fatigue might be setting in for more than one of us, because I also noticed that there were a little fewer comments at the website this week, and yeah, I think maybe we're getting possibly ready for things to go back to normal. I think we're kind of missing our routines. We're sort of missing our new episodes in general. Jamie was mellowing out this week, watching the show and really connecting in with Catherine Chancellor. Catherine, by the way, is still a big draw on these episodes for me. I mean, I don't know what it is exactly, but the woman is almost more appealing to me now, going back and watching her evolve through time. But yeah, Catherine is a big reason that I'm wanting to see these classics right now. But Jamie was also saying that she just really misses Catherine's presence on the show, but Jamie was also finding some solace in the show overall, because Y&R does tend to provide us with that emotional filler when times are good and also when times are bad. It's just Y&R is just almost this thing that we sink into. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not so great. Well, here's something great for you guys. Actually, Gary let me know this week that he got a new puppy dog. Gary got a new dog, and the dog's name is Blaine. Blaine. Here, Blaine. Here, Blaine. Can you hear me right now? But you guys are going to love this, because Gary made the really good suggestion for a new nickname for his new dog. And I think we need to start a petition to make sure that this name sticks. Gary says that his new dog shall forever now be known as Blaine Blainson. Okay, well, Gary came up with the Blaine Bladeson, but he didn't agree to let it be forever known as a Blade Bladeson pup. But I think that we need to all encourage him to just go with that. Gary, get a little scarf, tie it around little Bladeson's neck, and forever and ever and ever, every time you call your dog, you have to say it, and you have to think of us Y&R chatters and Y&R. Forever to be known in the future now, your pup's name is Blaine Bladeson. We're all a little bit crazy, I think. Soap opera fans are all a little bit crazy. I know I am. Hey, can you believe this? Get a load of this. Y&R Chat's 12-year anniversary is, Tuesday? May 26th? Can you believe that? Is that this coming Tuesday? Ugh! 12 years of Y&R Chat. It's just, I almost don't believe it. What was it? May 26th, 2008. Wow! I don't know how that makes me feel. Sometimes it feels like it's been longer, and sometimes it feels like I just started this. So, yeah, what do you know? 12 years later, here I am. Oh boy, I have been going back and listening to the classic Y&R chats this last week. I was listening to the stable fight episode between Nikki and Sharon, and I'll have to pick another episode and go back to listen to that this upcoming week. It's been interesting, but I really do think I'm ready to get back to some new episodes. Does anyone have any updates on when Y&R is going to resume production? I haven't heard anything. You guys always get the scoop well before I do. So please let me know if you have any news on our Y&R production. Things in Illinois are still closed by law, but I think that we're going to be doing some gradual reopening starting May 29th. So we're still under a stay-at-home order here, but next week I think it's going to loosen up a little bit, and I wonder if that's the case in California. Maybe you guys can let me know what buzz you're hearing. I hate to be so selfish, but I gotta tell you, I'm just really looking forward to Y&R getting back to production and giving us some new shows. I love the classics. I'm not in any way disliking them. I'm still having a good time watching them, but I do find myself yearning for that new material. I wonder what takeaways the writers and the production team and everybody involved with Y&R will have coming out of watching all of these classic episodes. I wonder if there'll be some new ideas birthed from the classics. Okay, everybody. Well, it is time for me to get going, but you can still go to yrchat.com. There's all kinds of stuff you can still do there, including leaving comments and just looking through all of the archives. From there, you'll find links to go see the old Y&R Chat videos and the old Y&R Chat podcasts. And yeah, stop by and say happy anniversary. I would love to hear from you guys. 12 years later, I'd love to just maybe get some happy anniversary messages this week. That would lift me up. Oh, okay, everybody. I love you. I hope you have a good week, and I will see you next time. Bye.